Mommy. I heard my daughter's voice filled with surprise and panic. Desperately, I tried to cling to my fading consciousness, but it was no use. I fainted right in front of her. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, having been rushed to the ER. My daughter was there, clutching my hand tightly, refusing to let go. I must have given her quite a scare. Filled with guilt, I was about to apologize when she spoke first. Mommy, the baby in your tummy says they don't want to be erased by Daddy. At her mysterious words, I held my breath in surprise. My name is Linda Williams. I'm a 27-year-old homemaker living with my husband, Mark, who is 2 years my senior, and our 4-year-old daughter, Sarah. I used to work as a sports trainer until recently when I had to quit. The reason? I'm expecting our second child. I really didn't want to quit, but after discovering my pregnancy, I started feeling unwell more often and had no choice but to leave. I was depressed after quitting a job I loved, but there were some silver linings. Mark, who hadn't been very helpful with housework or childcare before, started taking the initiative for my sake. Despite my worries about my health, I was glad to see him changing. At that time, I thought everything would be okay. Mommy, wake up, it's morning. I woke up to Sarah's innocent voice. It was 7 a.m., and the school bus for her daycare arrived at 7:30. I jumped up in a hurry. Shoot, Sarah, we need to get ready quickly. What's wrong, Mommy? We overslept. If we don't hurry, the bus will be here. While rushing around, brushing Sarah's hair, and leaving the room, I realized I hadn't seen Mark anywhere. He usually left around 7:15 a.m., so he should still be home. Maybe he's downstairs having breakfast. A little annoyed that he didn't check on us, I headed for the stairs. That's when it happened. I slipped and felt the momentary sensation of being thrown into the air. Instinctively, I reached out for the handrail and managed to grab onto it, preventing myself from tumbling down the stairs. That was close, I thought, putting my hand on my stomach. Thankfully, I hadn't hit it, and it didn't hurt. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Sarah, looking pale, rushed over. Mommy, are you okay? I'm fine, honey. Sorry for scaring you. Regaining my footing, I embraced Sarah. Just then, Mark, who must have noticed the commotion, rushed over from downstairs. What happened? I slipped and almost fell down the stairs. Whoa, be careful. I'm sorry, but it was like the floor was slippery. And the floor seems cleaner than usual. I hadn't noticed until now, but the wooden floor in the hallway was sparkling as if someone had polished it. Then Mark, in a flustered manner, said, Oh, right, I waxed the floor last night. Wax? Why would you do that all of a sudden? I noticed it while cleaning and got a little too excited. I'm sorry. I see, I replied, surprised at the idea of him waxing the floor, something he had never done before. But he had been doing a lot of housework recently, so perhaps he had started noticing the little things. Once men start paying attention to details, it just can't stop, can they? Even though I found it a bit strange, I decided not to worry about it. A few days later, on a Sunday, Mark had to go to work, so I decided to take Sarah to the park, just the two of us. Before, I would run around and play with Sarah, but I can't do that now. I watched her playing on the swing, a water bottle Mark had prepared for me in hand. Who would have thought that Mark would start preparing things like a water bottle for me? When Sarah was first born, Mark was so uninterested in anything to do with the house. It still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. He also had no interest in Sarah, and every time I said something to him, he got grumpy and started coming home from work later and later. The fact that he now prepares a bottle of water for me is still a shock, but I can't hide how happy it makes me. Thinking about this and feeling a bit thirsty, I decided to take a sip of the tea Mark had prepared for me. Then suddenly, Mommy? Sarah's voice cut through my thoughts. After drinking about a quarter of the bottle, I suddenly felt dizzy and began to feel unstable on my feet. I grabbed onto the fence of the swing for support, but even then, I could feel my strength fading, and it became increasingly difficult to stand. Mommy, what's wrong? Ah! I tried to respond, but my voice was weak. Mommy, hearing Sarah's surprised and worried voice, I felt a wave of guilt and fear wash over me. I desperately tried to hold on to my fading consciousness. If I faint here, I'll leave Sarah alone. Despite this thought, I fell to the ground, instinctively protecting my stomach. When I came to, the first thing I saw was a stark white ceiling. For a moment, I couldn't understand where I was, but then the smell of disinfectant and the sight of a nurse approaching brought clarity. Are you all right? she asked, and I realized I was in a hospital. Instantly, I thought of Sarah. Excuse me, Sarah, do you know where my daughter is? She should have been with me when I fainted, I said, sitting up and asking the nurse. She seemed to understand immediately and smiled reassuringly. She came to the hospital in the ambulance with you. She should be with your husband now. My husband? Yes, he left work early to come here. He arrived a little while ago. He's such a caring husband, the nurse said before leaving the room to call them. Feeling relieved that Sarah was not alone, my head started to spin again, and I collapsed back onto the bed. Why did this happen when there were no issues during my previous prenatal checkups? Was it because I moved around too much, or did I eat something bad? As these thoughts swirled in my mind, I suddenly remembered the tea from the water bottle I drank just before fainting. Come to think of it, that tea. Just as I considered this, the door opened and the nurse returned with a doctor, Mark, and Sarah. Mommy. Sarah, I'm glad. I'm sorry for leaving you alone, I said, reaching out to embrace her. I'm okay, but what about you, Mommy? Are you okay? Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. Yeah, I'm all right now, I replied, patting her head gently. The doctor smiled at me. In the end, it was decided that I would be hospitalized for 2 or 3 days. After a thorough examination by the doctor and nurse, they left the room. I'll go buy a drink, Mark said. Then he too left, leaving just Sarah and me in the hospital room. Sarah seemed a bit restless, as if she wanted to say something. What's up, Sarah? I asked. Mommy, can you keep a secret from Daddy? She asked. Huh? Okay, but why? I replied, curious. Although I wondered why she was asking, I nodded in agreement. Sarah brought her face closer to mine, wearing a serious expression. The baby is saying they don't want to get erased by Daddy, she whispered. Huh? I was momentarily speechless, unable to understand what Sarah was saying. She pursed her lips in dissatisfaction and spoke a little louder. The baby is saying Daddy's being mean and the tea in the water bottle. At these words, I was taken aback. I too had sensed an unusual bitterness in the tea from the water bottle. At the time, I thought maybe Mark had bought a different type of tea than usual and didn't give it much thought. But now, considering the dizziness I felt just after drinking it, I started to wonder if there was a connection to my fainting. What does she mean by the baby is saying? Just as I was about to ask Sarah more questions, Mark came back into the room. Hey Sarah, I'm sorry I'm late. The cafeteria was crowded. I swallowed my words in surprise, and Sarah seemed uncomfortable, burying her face in the bed. Mark looked at her with a puzzled expression. Something happened? Nah, it's nothing, I replied, trying to sound casual. Well, whatever. I'm going home for today, Mark said. I have to work tomorrow, so just rest up, okay? Mark said as he took Sarah's hand and left. My daughter showed a momentary reluctance to leave. Let's go home with Daddy today. Mommy is staying at the hospital. Okay, Sarah replied, following him without saying anything more. I couldn't help but feel uneasy about her. Was Sarah really okay? I was worried, but there was nothing I could do at the moment. I needed to focus on getting discharged as soon as possible, so I crawled into bed. However, I couldn't fall asleep easily. Sarah's puzzling words kept running through my mind. 3 days later, I was finally allowed to be discharged. Since Mark was working, my friend Kimberly came to pick me up. Kimberly was a friend from the gym where I used to work. She had been looking after me since I quit due to my health condition. I was shocked to hear you have fainted, but you seem to be doing much better than I thought. I've been sleeping so well in the hospital that I feel much better, I replied. I'm glad. I was worried because you're pregnant, Kimberly said as we drove home. While having this conversation, I felt a bit uneasy inside. I had been constantly feeling sluggish and heavy-headed, but the discomfort improved in just a few days. The only unusual things I had done during that time were taking a break from housework and child care and eating a balanced diet in the hospital. As I thought about it, I suddenly realized something. I hadn't eaten Mark's cooking for the past few days. I remembered there had been several oddities since Mark started doing housework. Besides almost slipping on the wax floor, other things had bothered me. For instance, items were placed in unusual spots, causing me to trip. I was told the shower was ready, but when I stepped in, the hot water tank was empty and cold water came out. Such incidents occur frequently, especially in winter when cold water came out. I rushed to the hospital out of concern for the baby in my belly. Fortunately, there were no problems, but it was a nerve-wracking experience. At the time, I thought these were just mistakes due to Mark's inexperience with housework. However, reconsidering now, each incident seemed like something that could lead to irreversible consequences if one thing went wrong. Landa, we're here. Ah, yeah. Before I knew it, we had arrived at the house. Seeing my silence, Kimberly looked at me with worry. If you're feeling sick, you should say so, okay? Yeah, I will, thanks. You should rest for today at least. I'll pick up Sarah, okay? Thank you, I appreciate it. As we got out of the car together, I thought to myself that I should talk to Sarah properly once she was back. In the evening, Sarah returned home with Kimberly, who had even bought some deli food for dinner. Call me if anything happens, Kimberly said before leaving. She was like a superhero. I silently jumped for joy in my mind. Having dinner with the deli food Kimberly bought, I felt unusually well and decided to talk to Sarah again. Can we talk a bit more about the other day? I asked. Sarah nodded seriously. Can you talk to the baby in my belly, Sarah? I asked. Yes, Sarah nodded firmly. It was hard to believe, but I felt that there was no falsehood in her words. Then can you tell me again what the baby is saying? The baby is scared of Daddy. Why? Daddy is trying to hurt us on purpose and separate Mommy and the baby. So the baby is clinging to Mommy with all its might. I was at a loss for words at this revelation. Her words, though clumsy, connected the dots I'd been feeling. Everything that felt off might have been deliberately planned to harm the baby. Feeling this, I shivered. Mommy, what's wrong? Are you in pain? Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm okay. Seeing Sarah's tearful face, I hastily embraced my little girl. I made a decision in secret. I have to find solid evidence or no one will believe this. The next day, after watching my husband leave for work, I started my search. I pulled something out from the back of the closet, a baby monitor we used when Sarah was an infant. If this reveals what he's doing, if it shows what I feared. The thought was so frightening. But if it showed nothing, that would be okay too. With a small hope in my heart, I hid the camera behind a houseplant. A few days later, I mustered up the courage to check it. I can't believe this. It's too awful. What was captured there was unimaginable enough to shatter my small hope. I made up my mind. I absolutely won't forgive this. A week or so passed since I saw the footage. I left my daughter Sarah at my parents' home earlier in the day, then tidied up the entire house and prepared a perfect dinner before Mark came home. Mark, who finally came home, was surprised to see the lavish meal set on the table. What's going on? I could have made dinner. I can't let you do anything dangerous anymore, I replied. Ha! What do you mean? I didn't miss the flash of caution in his eyes. I mean exactly what I said. What have you been feeding your pregnant wife all this time? I don't get it at all, he said, trying to sound innocent. My health has improved significantly since I stopped eating your cooking for the past week. What's that supposed to mean? He asked, slightly shaken. I had pretended to eat your cooking and threw it all away. When I told him this, he looked even more unsettled. Also, when I checked around the house, I noticed the non-slip pad under the rug was missing and the anti-tip device on the bookshelf next to the bed was removed. I got goosebumps when I found these. These weren't just targeted at our baby. It implied I was also a target. When I glanced at Mark, his mouth was twitching as he tried to force a smile. Now that I think about it, there was a time when body wash had spilled on the bathroom floor after a shower and things fell from shelves. If I had fallen and hit my stomach, it would have been a disaster. Those are just coincidences, right? Maybe I just made a little mistake, he said nervously. I thought so too until I saw this. I thrust my phone in front of his face and played the footage recorded on the baby monitor. There was Mark talking on the phone with someone, and his voice was clearly recorded. I get it, but it's not going as planned. It's surprisingly hard to make a person disappear in an accident. Well, two people. It would be best if the baby in the belly could disappear too. Those words from the video sent chills down my spine no matter how many times I heard them. Watching Mark, I saw he was trembling slightly, unable to hide his fear. Despite being wary, I continued to speak. The person on the phone is a woman, isn't it? Once I'm gone, you're planning all these things with her, things too disgusting to even mention. You're spying on me like this. I'll sue you. How dare you? Do you even understand what you've done? Mark shouted. Just shut up. Just shut up. No longer able to find excuses, Mark's face turned bright red as he lost control and lashed out at me. Instinctively, I hunched over to protect my stomach. Just as I did, a loud bang sounded, and the next moment, I heard Mark scream. Landa, are you okay? Kimberly, thank you. I looked over in relief to find Kimberly, who had easily subdued Mark and was laughing. In fact, she's a strong woman who has won the national wrestling tournament multiple times. For the day, I had asked Kimberly to stand by in the next room just in case. Mark, pinned down by Kimberly, was already red-faced and bellowing. You think you're alive because of who? Me, right? Yet you annoy me with demands to play with the kids and help with housework. If you all would just disappear, I could live freely. Just get lost for my sake, you idiot. So that's what you think. But thank you. Ha! Actually, you just helped me a lot by self-destructing. Saying so, I thrust my phone, which was in call mode, in front of Mark. The call was to 9211. Actually, it had been in this state for a little while before, so all of Mark's words had gone straight through to the police. Please, not the cops. Mark was struggling to escape, but Kimberly had him firmly pinned down, and he couldn't move. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, I apologize. Forgive me. That's not something you can get away with just by apologizing. What you were about to do. Don't say such things. While Mark was thrashing around, the sound of several footsteps and a voice saying, "We're coming in," echoed as police officers entered through the already unlocked door. In no time, Mark was taken away. Even on his way out, Mark was pathetically clinging to me and pleading, "Help me." A subsequent investigation revealed the plan by Mark and his mistress. Their objective was to eliminate me, who was in their way, so they could be together. Even if they failed to get rid of me, they were contemplating a story that the loss of our child due to my carelessness would lead to divorce. Moreover, if they could blame it on me, they thought they could claim compensation at the time of divorce. The sheer audacity of it all leaves me speechless. Even now, when I think about what could have happened if I hadn't noticed anything, it still sends chills down my spine. Mommy, the baby is happy. She says she can always be by your side. When I went to pick up Sarah, she said that right away. Yes, I'm so glad. It's all thanks to you. I thanked my daughter from the bottom of my heart, and tears of relief flowed. Mommy, why are you crying? The baby is looking forward to meeting you. I'm also very excited. About a month after Mark's arrest, our divorce was finalized. A few months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Sarah is overjoyed at her sister's birth and has now become a very reliable big sister.